A war of words has erupted between New Delhi and Washington, D.C. India hit back hard at US President Donald Trump's threat to hike tariffs on Indian goods over continued imports of Russian oil. In a sharply worded statement, India called the targeting unjustified and unreasonable, slamming what it sees as Washington's double standards. While India buys oil for survival, the US and EU quietly continue importing Russian gas, uranium, and other strategic goods. During Trump's campaign trail, he thundered,
Modi, you're fantastic. I mean, fantastic man. A lot of these leaders are fantastic. You have to understand one thing. They're 100%. These people are the sharpest people. They're not a little bit backward. They are at the top. You know the expression, they're at the top of their game.
But people in India were only interested in one part of that statement. From temples in Varanasi to villages in Gujarat, people did pujas, prayed for Trump's win. Modi had pulled off the Howdy Modi and Namaste Trump spectacles. India felt it had America in its corner should Trump win. But nobody listened to the latter part. This is what Trump had said in that very same campaign trail.
But India is very tough. Brazil is very tough. There are certain countries, I can tell you every one. I can give you from top to bottom. China is the toughest of all, but we were taking care of China with the tariffs. So we're going to do a reciprocal trade. If anybody charges us 10 cents, if they charge us $2, if they charge us 100%, 250, we charge them the same thing. And you know what's going to happen? Everything's going to disappear, and we're going to end up having free trade again. And if it doesn't disappear, we're going to take in a lot of money.
While many in India are shocked, Trump is only reiterating what he said during the campaign trails.
India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left. He's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years.
Tariffs slapped, oil purchases questioned, strategic patience shaken. So what happened? How can Modi handle Trump now? Where did India go wrong? Did New Delhi bet too much on a personal friendship and get Trump completely wrong? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The so-called Modi-Trump bromance, once paraded as a geopolitical success story, is cracking under the weight of reality. What began with mutual praise and public spectacle is now mired in accusations, tariffs, and transactional jabs. Trump's return has not meant a return to warmth. Instead, it's brought back a firestorm of demands, from cutting Russian oil deals to reshaping trade policy. India, once seen as a natural ally, is now being cast as a selfish actor. Was India naive? Did it misread Trump's America First realism as something more enduring? Has New Delhi misunderstood the man, the message, and the moment? When Modi threw his weight behind Trump, literally sharing the stage with him in Houston and Ahmedabad, it was a bet on personal chemistry over policy complexity. India saw Trump not as a volatile businessman president, but as a deal maker who'd favor friends. The reality? Trump doesn't do friendships. He does leverage. And India misread that playbook.
If you don't make your product in America, however, under the Trump administration, you will pay a tariff, and in some cases, a rather large one. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. India charges us auto tariffs higher than 100%. China's average tariff on our products is twice what we charge them. And South Korea's average tariff is 4 times higher. Think of that, 4 times higher. And we give so much help militarily and in so many other ways to South Korea. But that's what happens. This is happening by friend and foe. This system is not fair to the United States and never was. And so on April 2nd, I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to be accused of April Fool's Day. That's not, just one day was cost us a lot of money. But we're going to do it in April. I'm a very superstitious person. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them.
In the post-Puja glow, Indian officials expected trade concessions, stronger anti-China alignment, and unwavering backing on Pakistan. What they got was a rude awakening. Trump's style is to flatter, extract, then slam hard when his terms aren't met with. India believed the flattery. It forgot the fine print.
They are pressing down on India. Why is he not pressing down on China with the same frequency? We are not hearing anything from him about China, by the way. Right, because China is also buying Russian oil to the same extent. Whatever it be, it presents tough choices for India. From a purely economic analysis, we save around $10 billion a year when we import Russian oil at discounted rates. Again, from a purely economic basis, if 25% tariffs are imposed upon us, India stands to lose exports to the tune of anywhere between $20 to $30 billion. So that's the economic analysis, which way to go. However, what Trump is making it complicated for himself and for India is the aspect of geopolitics. India's decision would not be merely on numbers. It would also have a layer of optopolitics, geopolitics, India's national interest, and India's position in the global theater. Between these two, economic considerations and national interest considerations, I would say, India will decide. Let us see what the decision. But whichever way it be, unfortunately, even without the Russian penalties, there will be a downturn in our exports to the United States. Even if it's a 15% tariff, even if we manage to negotiate down the line 15% tariff, that will again still mean a fall in our exports of about $15 billion to the US. We export 90 billion, it will mean we'll export around 75 billion. So that will in any case be a loss for our export earnings, but that's something which the entire world is facing, and we will also.
One of New Delhi's fundamental missteps was assuming that warm handshakes and mega rallies could override hard economic interests. Modi's outreach to Trump was personal, public, and passionate, but Trump doesn't separate business from bromance. The great friend narrative gave India false confidence. So when Trump slapped a 25% tariff on Indian goods, many in Delhi were stunned. They shouldn't have been. Trump's loyalty lies only with the US balance sheet. He saw India as a trade surplus machine, not a strategic soulmate. And when India didn't cave in on US demands, whether dairy access, data localization, or defense offsets, Trump brought out the hammer. Even during Trump's first term, he warned about India's very high tariffs and called it the tariff king.
India, which is the tariff king, they called us and they say, we want to start negotiations immediately. When Bob Lighthizer said, what happened? You would never do this. They said, no, we want to keep your president happy. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? It's true. They have to keep us happy because they understand that we're wise to what's been happening. India charges tariffs of 100%. And then if we want to put a tariff of 25% on, people will call from Congress. But that's not free trade. And I'd look back to people and say, where did these people come from? Well, India charges us tremendous tariffs. When we send Harley Davidsons, motorcycles, other things to India, they charge very, very high tariffs. And I've spoken to Prime Minister Modi, and he's going to reduce them very substantially.
But India, blinded by symbolic gestures and soft power pageantry, dismissed it as campaign noise. That noise has become policy. Now, with Russian oil as the new wedge, Trump has publicly accused India of reselling massive amounts of crude for profit while taking US market access for granted. The Indian response? Defensive, quiet, calculated. But the damage is done already. Modi's image as the man who could handle Trump has taken a hit. And Trump has proven, yet again, that friends get no free passes. India's dependence on Russian oil is no secret. With crude prices volatile and energy security paramount, India turned to Moscow for discounted supply. Russia now accounts for up to 40% of India's oil imports. But Trump, who sees foreign policy through a profit-loss lens, views this as betrayal.
If you go back and look at what happened right after the war began in Ukraine, there was a lot of unhappiness in the U.S. and in other Western countries, particularly in the EU, about India's relationship with Russia and its commercial relationship with Russia. But I think that foreign governments came around to the fact that India has this important relationship with Russia, and it's going to import cheap oil from Russia because it serves India's economic interests. And indeed, there is a view, certainly on the part of the U.S. government, that by importing cheap oil from Russia, India was actually helping stabilize global energy markets. So there was really no view at that point toward this idea of needing to consider sanctioning India because of its because of its doing business with Russia. Indeed, now we're seeing a very different position being taken by the U.S. and particularly by President Trump. But I think that this really comes down to other issues, to broader issues here involving President Trump, how he feels about the way that India's government has treated him, as well as his rigidly transactional and commercial view when it comes to foreign policy and wanting to at all costs pursue a foreign policy that at all costs is meant to uphold U.S. economic interests, and that entails applying pressure on any country, including a close partner like India, that is doing things that Trump feels don't serve U.S. interests, such as importing too much Russian oil and not enough American oil, even though, as you well know, India has been importing a lot of American energy in recent years at a rising rate, in fact.
He's lashed out, accusing India of undermining the West's Ukraine strategy and helping Putin. Tariffs became punishment. Worse, he framed it as India profiting from global chaos. Modi's government, caught between the need for energy and the optics of global partnerships, is now locked in a trilemma: oil, optics, and offense from Trump.
Well, India is a sovereign country, and it has to basically look at what's good for India. And if strategic relationship with Russia works, then it has to pursue that. And I think that's where we have to explain to the Trump administration also that you cannot basically take your own interests at somebody else's expenses. So it is important that communication comes in, but you can't do this through media or through social or through Twitter, through basically X. There has to be done behind the scene. And that's what we're working on between the two countries.
On August 4th, 2025, India's Ministry of External Affairs dropped a diplomatic bombshell. In a sharply worded statement, it slammed US President Donald Trump's threat to raise tariffs on Indian goods over India's continued imports of Russian oil, calling the move unjustified and unreasonable. Ministry of External Affairs in India emphasized that India's oil purchases are driven by survival, not sympathy for Moscow. With Middle Eastern oil redirected to Europe after the Ukraine war, India chose to buy discounted Russian crude to shield its economy and protect its people. But India's anger in that statement wasn't just economic, it was moral. The statement pointed fingers at US and EU hypocrisy, pointing out how the West still trades heavily with Russia in everything from uranium to fertilizers. And yet, India is singled out. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar doubled down, urging a fairer global order and asserting India's right to strategic autonomy. In short, India would not be bullied.
We live in complicated and uncertain times. Our collective desire is to see a fair and representative global order, not one dominated by a few. That quest is often articulated as political or economic rebalance. But I want to say this to you: obtaining respect and ensuring dignity for societies can also be achieved through cultural prowess, especially through cultural prowess.
Perhaps the most jarring twist for India was Trump's outreach to Pakistan. Military meetings, energy cooperation talk, and vague proposals of regional balance. For a country that expected Trump to be firmly in its anti-Pakistan corner, this was betrayal. It exposed another blind spot, the belief that Trump's strategic alignments were permanent. India assumed Pakistan was sidelined. Trump saw another bargaining chip. Modi's past wins, Operation Sindoor, FATF pressure, and the UN narrative weren't enough. Trump's eyes are on deals. If Pakistan offers them, he'll listen. That's the Trump doctrine. What can you give me today? Trump's behavior reveals a world that's moved beyond traditional alliances. The era of "you're with us because you're our friend" is over. Trump is the poster child of this shift, and India must adapt. India imagined a bond of shared democratic values and anti-China alignment, but Trump sees India as one more competitor in a crowded global bazaar.
Yeah, obviously he is looking for a reaction because India has made every effort now. Its purchase of US energy has gone up by almost 150%. And he's just trying to poke at India to get its reaction. But you don't basically build relationship by tweet and provoking nations. I think you build it by looking at what's overall bigger partnership and then try to manage that.
New Delhi must now shift from sentimentality to strategy, from puja to policy. Strategic autonomy isn't a slogan anymore, it's survival. Trump's imposition of a 25% tariff on all Indian goods wasn't just economic muscle flexing, it was a warning shot, a message, a recalibration. India, he says, has benefited too much, given too little. The US goods trade deficit with India stood at $45.7 billion in 2024. For Trump, that's theft, plain and simple. His administration has revived old complaints: high tariffs, restricted market access, regulatory red tape, and unfair practices in pharma, agriculture, and tech. For Indian exporters, it's panic. For policymakers, it's a lesson. Trump isn't nostalgic about history. He's obsessed with balance sheets. So what must Modi do now? First, abandon illusions of personal diplomacy. Trump is a negotiator, not a friend. He respects leverage, not loyalty. Second, double down on economic reforms, ease of doing business, transparency, tax simplicity, and tech innovation. Only a competitive Indian economy can withstand Trump's pressure. Third, diversify trade. Europe, Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America. Reduce overdependence on the US market, which now comes with strings and scorn. Fourth, use strategic diplomacy. Make the Indo-Pacific narrative about mutual interest, not favors. Remind Washington, D.C. that India is still the best bet in Asia to counter Beijing. Modi must now do what he does best, play both sides without blinking. What can India, what can New Delhi really do to bring this relationship back on track? Not because it's America alone, because it's a very important strategic partner today for India. Whether it's net security that we're looking at, defense cooperation that we're looking at, containment or countering forces that are aggressive in the region, particularly China, looking at alternatives in the supply chain routes, all of that. America and India would have to work hand in hand. So in such a scenario, how can Modi handle Trump?
Well, I think the immediate challenge is, I would say, establishing workable, sustainable channels of communication in President Trump's political advisory council or brains trust in at the White House and surrounding him. That is, I mean, so far we were talking about the structural reasons and geopolitics, but there is something which actually is not been going well for India in the recent years, which is that India's ability to be in communication with the key members of the presidential team and his political counsel, so to speak, that is significantly been diminished at the moment. Even during President Trump's first term, Indian diplomats and Indian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, External Affairs Ministry had very good advocates in his orbit who would argue India's case. From what I understand, that those channels have been broken. So the new people there on both sides, in the White House also, that is pretty much an entirely new team, and the Indian diplomacy is also being guided by a set of new people. So I think we need to really work on opening and building those communication and communicating with them about the same point, actually, the same points that we all talk about. India's rise is not a threat by any means to the United States. And India has its own development imperatives, which compels it to give protection to its farmers, to ensure that it has a robust manufacturing sector. These are points that will have to be communicated effectively to the people who have the time to listen. I mean, we putting out a statement here and having a TV debate may not actually reach the President of the United States. So we must build or revive those channels through which we have back channel communication with President Trump and his advisors. I think that will be the first step for India, for Prime Minister Modi. But as I said, this is a long game right now. I think it will take some time before we can mend this relationship back into normal route of its flourishing.
That means standing firm on Russian oil, but framing it as essential to global stability. It means calling out Western hypocrisy. Europe still buys Russian commodities, but doing so without triggering full-blown backlash. It also means engaging Trump with caution, negotiating from a position of strength, not supplication. Trump hates weakness. Modi must project resolve, not reverence. This is no longer about winning favor. It's about protecting Indian interests in a world where every ally is a potential adversary and every friend a future threat. The biggest lesson for India: don't tie national strategy to individual leaders. Biden, Trump, or anyone else, American policy is shifting toward hard realism. India must do the same. India must engage not as a junior partner, but as a sovereign power navigating a multipolar world. Trump's erratic style may be unnerving, but it forces clarity. For once, India must thank him, not for friendship, but for forcing realism. India's obsession with optics, handshakes, stagecraft, mega events must now give way to trench warfare, tough negotiations, quiet diplomacy, and pragmatic positioning. Every time Trump lashes out, India must respond with restraint and recalibrated readiness. There's no room for sentiment, only strategy. Modi, long celebrated as the master communicator, must now become the master negotiator, one who can stare down the transactional tyranny of Trump and still secure what matters. India got Trump wrong because it mistook praise for policy. It believed in the myth of friendship in a world governed by force, finance, and fear. Modi must now deal with the reality. Trump can't be handled. He must be outmaneuvered. That means abandoning flattery and embracing firmness. That means defending national interests with data, diplomacy, and dignity, not devotional displays. That means reshaping India's role, not as a cheerleader of the West, but as a strategic player with its own rules. Because Trump isn't here to dance at Namaste Trump. He's here to deal. And if Modi wants to win, it's time to stop praying and start playing. Thank you for watching Statecraft.